So we've opened up Blender again, okay? So I'm going to click outside. In my first lesson, I've already shown you about the basic tools and also a couple of things such as navigation, movement, and all of them. So in this lesson, I'm going to be showing you about the interface, workspace, and the default startups. So I'm going to show it to you step by step, so make sure not to skip any part. So first thing, what we have to do over here, that as we've already opened up Blender, we already know how to navigate. And I'm going to show you two different toolbars, which I'm going to be showing it to you by pressing on a shortcut key. And another thing you have to keep in mind is that whenever you are using Blender, the shortcut key is going to make your work a lot more easier. Now, in my past lesson or my first lesson, I've shown you about the grab, then the scale, and also about the rotation and selection and all of them, right? And eventually I've also shown you about the 3D cursor, then how to, place it, remove it, okay? So you can see it over here that we have one of the toolbars over here, which we are not using or we do not use most of the time, which I most of the time use through my shortcut keys, because if you get more, friendly and experienced on Blender, the shortcut keys are going to speed up your process and make your work a lot more easier instead of clicking on these tools, okay? So we can either press on T, which is going to be the left side panel, and we can also press on N, which is going to be the right side panel. Now, on the right side panel, we have three of these tabs, which is going to be this one. Then we have the tool, and then we have is the view. Well, these three are going to be very complex, and these are quite advanced, so I'm not going to be showing it to you right now, but you just need to know that we have these two types of, toolbars, which can be, just extended and also hidden up whenever we want. So T for the left side and N for the right side. So make sure to keep that thing in mind. And you also have a couple of options over here: origin, location, and also parent, whichever one you want to select from. But obviously, step by step, we're going to cover up each and every one of them, so you can try them out later on. Now, on the left side panel, we have a couple of these tools. One of the first one we have is the select box, which is this one basically. So you can see this is how it works, which we selected just by, using our mouse, which is the left click of the mouse. And then the next one we have over here, we can also right click, and then we have is, assign shortcuts and also online manual. Then the next one we have is the cursor, which we placed using this one, but you can also press on shift and place it with your right mouse key. Whichever tool you have selected on, you can just use this just by pressing on shift. Well, if you've seen my first lesson, you already know how to do this. Then we have is the move, which we used by G. Select on that. So I'm going to select on this one, G, and then we moved it. But you can also select on this and then move up your object on whichever angle you want. Now you can see that this has been, on a specific axis, but I'm going to change it X, Y, and Z. You can change it, and this is how it will work like, okay? Z for up and down, X for the left and right now, and Y for that side, okay? So I'm going to press on this, and the next one we have is the rotate. Select on that object, and you'll be able to rotate it in all angles, okay? So this is what appears up when you click on these buttons. I'm going to do is just rotate it. You can see it's working on the x-axis. You can also press it on the y-axis and also the z-axis. It's basically up to you how you want to work with it. Okay, I'm going to keep it simple. There we go. We'll just keep it over here. And then we have is the next one over here, which is called the scale. You can also scale it up if you want to. You can also increase and decrease it up. Then we have is the option over here, which is also going to be the gyro, which is kind of like the tracking ball, which we did in our previous lesson. You can see this is how it looks like. I'm going to zoom out. So I'm going to press on Control Z. There we go. This is our box. Control Shift Z to redo the process. And you can also go off to edit and also redo the process like this. Shift Control and Z. And you can also use this annotate if you want to. You can also like put in or draw something on your workspace or on your shape. And then we have is the measure. You can also measure certain things by using this option. It's just kind of like a ruler, but like a pen, but it will give you the exact, the measurements. And then we have is the add cube. You can also add in a cube if you want to. Click on that option, zoom out. First I'm going to do is just going to zoom out. There we go. And if we rotate over here, there we go. We could add in our cube. Let's say on the S, I'm going to do is just press it on the Y. I'm going to do is just reduce it. S and X. There we go. I'm going to keep it somewhere around over here. And I'm going to delete this one because I'm not going to be needing that. I'm going to do is just press on G. And there we go. I'm going to move it on the Y-axis. Again, G, Y-axis. There we go. Quite at the center. I'm going to press on G, X-axis, a bit on the center. So totally perfect. Now, as we are basically done with these tools, and I've also shown you about it in my previous lesson, now we can see on the bottom of the screen, we have is this playback option. I'm going to increase it up just for a bit, and you can. Now, this is basically called the timeline panel, the structures and everything you have. It will turn out to be like a video. You can see this. This is going to be the playback. You can also keyframe it. So you can obviously, this is like auto keyframing because obviously if you are doing animations, it needs to be keyframed. So whenever you apply a keyframe, it will be applied over here on this timeline panel, and you can play it up, pause it, move to the next one, and so on. Okay. So basically we are also done with this timeline panel. Now let's move on to the right side of our workspace, which is one of the most important part. Now there are a couple of the things over here which I'm going to be skipping. Okay. So let's move on the right side of this bottom part. So the first thing which you can see is the editor type. And the first thing which I'm going to do is that you can see it over here that the tool over here is called the active tool and workspace settings. When you click on that, this is how it will show up. But another thing is that whenever you have selected any other tool, it will change according to your need. Let's say I have selected any specific object, and then I'm going to right click on it. And if I set the origin to geometry, and you can see, or you'll be able to see that it will change whenever you are changing any effect to it. So let's say I'm going to select on this. If I go off the modeling, then you can see on active tool, it will be a lot more different. Okay. So it's going to depend on what you basically have turned on. If I click on this one, it will look like this. If I turn on this one, it will look like this. I have to go off the layout again. And then if I select on this one, it will look like this. So it depends on what tool you have turned on, or the active tool. Okay. So if I turn on this one, this is how it will look like. This is how it will look like. This is how it will look like. And even if I apply more effect, let's say I'm going to do is going to be changing on the select circle. And there we go. We have the select circle over here. If I select on this, and then I'm going to click on this one and click on sculpt mode, you can basically see all the differences of the open or the active tools in Blender. So you can also change it over here, change a bit of them and tweak it. So you can see whichever effect or whichever tool is basically active on your workspace or on in Blender. Now let's move on to the next one, which is called the render effect or the renders. So here, the default render mode, you can see the render engine is called the EV. Well, if you want more realistic type of render engine, you can try in cycles. But what happens when you turn on cycles is that you need to have a really good device because it's going to be close to reality. And EV is kind of like a game engine, even though it's going to be run on real time. But still, if you want a better type of, realistic type of effect or realistic type of render, you can move on to cycle. Whenever you're using cycle, it will take a bit more time to render up any of your animation or any of your object on your render panel, because you can see that how it is changing and how, the optimization is working now. Okay, so you can also move on to EV. You can see now how smooth it is. But this is kind of like a gaming type of engine. So it's going to be real time, but yet it's going to be, not that realistic like cycles. And you can also turn on Workbench. Now, if you want to move on to render, you can also press on F12 on your keyboard, or you can go off to render over here and click on render image. Now you can press on that render image, and this is how it should look like from your camera. Now, how are you going to see how it looks like? So you can click on 0 on your keyboard, which is going to be this one. I'm going to go off to, let's say, layout, or let's say I'm going to move on to file. There we go. I'm going to sculpt it up. If you want to, you can also change it directly to object mode. I'm going to press on 0. Or you can also go off to edits, go off to preferences, and then emulate the numpad. And I'm going to press on 0. And this is the view which we are getting on the render mode. So I'm going to press on that again. And what we're going to do is going to be selecting on this. I'm going to do is just send it a bit back. So I'm going to press on G. I'm going to press it on the Y-axis and also on the X-axis. There we go. And I want it a bit on this side. There we go. I'm going to do select on this G. There we go. Press on 0 and we can see the whole thing right now. Okay. We can also try the same one, EV. Let's press on F12. And you can see this is how it looks like on the render view. So I'm going to close it off again. We can also press on escape. Now the next thing what you can do is try out cycles. If I press on F12, it will take a bit more time to render it up according to what changes you make. But you can see that this looks a lot more better than EV or Workbench. So press on escape to get out of this render, mode. You can see that over here. And I'm going to keep it on EV right now so that it just takes up less space or CPU usage. And over here, you have this option of sampling. You can also fix out what type of sampling you want. Let's say I want somewhere around 70, 72. On the viewport, I'm going to put it on 20. You can also shift on to the next one. So on the output over here, we have is the resolution, which you can change and toggle through. Another thing on the render is that whenever you are working, or let's say you started off with EV and later on you changed it into cycle, it will not make any difference, or it will not, make a problem in your work. Okay, so you can keep that thing in mind and you can change it whenever you want to. Okay, so basically you're done with that. And now let's move on to our scene. Now I'm going to move on to our camera view. And from here, you're going to change out your resolution. We have the native resolution, which is 1920 into 1080 pixels. So I can also reduce it or increase it according to my need. Let's say I'm going to just keep it on 2052. And on the y-axis, I'm going to keep it to be somewhere around like this, or maybe increase it a bit more. So it basically depends on you which one you want to use. And you can also type in, let's say I can also type in 1920 pixels, enter, and then 1280. There we go. This is how it will work. Or 1080. 1080. Let's just type in 1080. There we go. Then we can also fix out the aspect. We can fix it out on the aspect ratio 1, and also fix out the Y if you want to. And you can also keep it on 1 if you want to. And you can also render the regions, which is going to be this specific parts. Okay. You can also crop out the rendered region, crop to rendered. And also you can fix in the frames, whichever one you want. You can also customize it up to 320, 500. It's basically up to you and depends on your PC, whichever device you're using, and your specs. The better your PC is, the better your render is going to be, and the faster your render is going to be. Okay, so keep that thing in mind. You can see also the output on where it is kept if you are trying to export it up. You can also see the file extension where it is saved up. You can also change up the format into whichever format you want. You have JPEG, JPG 2000. Then we also have AVI RAW, OpenEXR, WebP. Then we have Cineon. Okay, there are a couple of the ones which you'll be able to change into. And we also have three types of color format, which is BW, which is black and white. Then we have RGB, and we also have RGBA. One thing which you don't have is called the sRGB. If you had a sRGB, it will be very easier for you to take it directly into Adobe softwares too. But you can also take it from RGB to sRGB when you move it to other softwares. Okay. So we also have the color depth, which is kind of like the bit depth resolution. You can change it to 8 or 16, but it does not, have a 32-bit. But you can try out 8-bit or 16-bit. It's going to give you a really good result. But one thing you have to do is that if you want a better render, you have to change it to cycles. Okay. So there we go. We are almost done with this part. Now let's move on to our next one, which we have is the viewing layer. You can use for rendering your specific layer, which is this is basically the first layer, and this is the layer which we use most of the time. Okay. So you can use it for rendering, or you can also use this render the single layer if you want to. So try out the layers whenever you want to. Then we have the data. You can also apply in mist, apply more, Z, mist, whichever one you want. And you can also apply shaders and a bit of effect, and the transparency will be applied on that specific layer. Now let's move on to the scenes. You can apply or change up your camera. We have the background scene. Which is this one, active clip, which is this one. And you can also apply in units. You can change it up whenever you want to. You can fix out the gravity, the simulation, the key sets, the audio, the rigid body world, and also the custom properties. Well, you're not gonna be needing that, or it's this much, but you can also fiddle through them whenever you want to. Then we have is the world effect. So this is basically the world effect. You can also, let's just move on to O. And you can see whenever we move off to our render panel, our render section, this is how it looks like. But the outside part is called the world, okay? So you can change the color up. So let's say I'm going to do is just surface background. I want the color to be, let's say I have a different color. So I'm going to do is just keep it somewhere around over here. You can fix in the strength. Now, if we move on to our render panel, you'll basically see this is the color and the light is taking the effect, okay? So you can also make it brighter. I'm going to just take it over here, press on G. I'm going to move it somewhere around over here. It obviously has a bit of the color of the background, which you'll see over here. And you can also change it whenever you want to. You can also change it to this one. And you can obviously make it brighter. You can obviously make it darker whenever you want. And you can also fix in with RGB, sRGB, and also the hex codes. You can put in your own hex codes. And this is how it will look like. Now let's move on to our render panel again. Select on this, F12. This is how it will look like, okay? So now you know how you'll be able to change the outside world too. And there are also a couple of other things. Let's say I want a brick texture. Now let's say maybe I want a different one. Let's say I want environment texture. You can also apply that. You can also apply black body. You can also apply different ones such as, let's say, point density. Okay, find out the one which you basically have to use. And if you don't want to use any of them, you just have to, keep it on the brightness contrast or remove them whenever you want to. From here, I'm going to do is just reduce the color. I'm going to keep it somewhere around over here. And this is how it will look like. Or you can also remove that color too. Go off to RGB. There we go. I'm going to keep it somewhere over here so that we can see the whole thing. And also, you can also remove that specific color. There we go. You can also remove the surface if you want to. And you can also apply in volume, the mist pass, the viewport display, and also the custom properties. Then we have the collection properties. So the collection properties are going to be everything that is in your collection, such as this specific cube. Then we have is the lights. And then we also have is the camera. Okay, so each and every one of them belongs to the collection over here. Lights, cube 1 and 2, and also the camera. So all of them are the collection. So from here, you'll be able to select up instance and also line art all of them together. Another thing which I didn't show you is that you can select all of them together. Let's say I'm going to do is just use this. There we go. I'm going to just fix in that up. And we can select all of them at once, or you can right click on it. There we go. You can also undo the whole process. You can press on A, And then we press on G, we can move all of them together. We can also do the same thing on scale. We can all scale of them all together and also rotate them all together at once. So keep that thing in mind that you can also select all of them and work on all of them at the same time. Now let's move on to the camera over here. This is also a bit of very advanced, so I'm going to be skipping this camera part and let's move on to our physics. Now on our physics, what we're going to do is going to be selecting this part over here. And what we have is that we can apply a bit of effect on our specific part of this photo. Now we have this on our object mode, so I'm going to keep it on the radius. You can also change its, change the way it looks like. I'm going to do is change it to this. And you can also apply in rigid body constraints. You can also remove it if you want to. You can also apply in force views. So let's say I can apply a bit of force. Let's say I maybe want a magnetic force, or maybe let's say I want to drag. So if you object, you can apply effects over here. Let's say maybe I want a bit of fluid flow, or maybe I want a bit of force over here. And if I keyframe this, I can also select on the specific part, do is Control A to select it. Press on G. There we go. You can see different type of effects over here you want. Okay. Whatever effect you want to apply on your physics. And there are a lot of things which you will be able to apply on the shape. You'll be able to apply plane. You'll be able to apply more effects over here. You just have to fiddle through each and every one. You can also remove them. And also this one, you can, rigid body would add rigid body constraints. And you can apply it, okay? It's up to you, whichever one you want to work with. Then we have is this option of constraints. You can also add constraints to it. Let's say over here, I'm going to apply a bit of crop rotation. So you can see that this is the crop rotation, and I can also apply maybe limit scaling or limit rotation. So let's say I'm going to limit the x-axis and also the y-axis. And if I select on this one, okay, let's say on this one, it has been selected on this one, but I'm going to do is select on this specific object. So I'm going to do is going to be removing that, and I'm going to do is just limit the rotation. So I'm going to do select this and this. So now if we press on R, we'll be able to rotate it only on one axis, not on the other ones. Okay, let's try the camera. Let's try R. You can see even if we try Y, X, or Z, only you'll be able to move it on Z, but not on the other axes. Okay, because we have limited up, the object constraint. So it's basically up to you, however you want to work with it. So now we have this over here. We'll not be able to, drag it upwards. Okay. So customize it however you want and fiddle through these options. Check it out, which one is actually useful for you. And I'm almost showing you most of the useful ones. Now, the next one which we have is the data, which you're also not going to be using it most of the time. So let's move on to the last one, which we have is texture. You can apply a bit of texture on your specific elements. You can see it over here. I'm going to do is just remove these elements. What I'm going to do is just remove the scene collection, and I'm going to do is apply my own ones. To do that, I'm going to do is just click on Shift and A. Shift and A on my keyboard, or click on this one. And then from here, I'm going to do is just apply a Q. And I'm going to do is just scale it a bit. There we go. And I'm going to apply myself a light. Shift and A, light point. I'm going to zoom out a bit. Scale it. I'm going to select on this specific object. And then I'm going to move it a bit to the left side, okay? There we go. Shift and A. Put on your light point. Scale it. G, Z, and then increase it however you like it. Okay, so now you know how it works. You can also move it whenever you want. There we go. So we are basically done with almost all of our tabs. Now the last one is the texture. You can apply in your own texture. You can apply a bit of brush effect. You can also get a preview of this. Let's say maybe I want clouds. You can also apply that specific effect. You can just fiddle through whichever one you want, and it will just have that specific effect on that specific element. Okay? So there are a lot of these textures which you'll be able to change to. Let's say Stu-key. And then we also have Musgrave. So whichever one you want to use, just fiddle through them. You can also apply in colors. See this, how it works. Okay. And whenever you're rendering them, press on F12. Okay, you just have to put in your camera first. So I'm going to just press on Shift A. Put in your camera, which is going to be over here. And what I'm going to do is going to be pressing on G. Press on Z. Press on G. There we go. Now if we press on F12, we will be going off to our render mode. You can see this is how it looks like, but if we just press on 0, this is how it will look like. And whenever you're rendering, it will take a bit more time to render it up because that is how it's looking like. And this is how it looks like the actual, the box. This is black. Okay. So hope you now understood how you'll be able to toggle through each and every one of these tabs. Now, the last thing which I'm going to be showing you is going to be a bit different. Okay, I'm going to press on A. I'm going to delete all of them. Okay, there we go. We have all of them removed. Let's press on Shift and A. And on the mesh, I'm going to apply a couple of these monkey heads. So I'm going to press on this Alt, and I'm going to do is just copy this, or press on Control C and Control V to make copies of this. Or you can just apply it however you want. So let's say I want to apply in more monkeys. I'm going to press on G. I'm going to keep it over here. We have another one. G. There we go. Shift A. Mesh. Monkey. And you can also copy it however you want. But I'm going to press on Shift and keep another one over here. Shift A. Mesh. And then monkey. So we have these monkeys over here. I'm going to press on G. Okay. So after we're done, what we can do is that we can select up any of these monkeys over here. And whenever you want to go off to modeling, you'll basically see all of the points which it needs to make up that specific element or that specific shape. You can customize it however you want. Okay. You can rotate it, move it, and everything. And even if you want to copy the same process, just press on Control C and Control V to make the copy of that specific element or specific subject. So you can go off the layout again, and there we go, we have it. Now, whenever you have any camera applied, you can apply a camera, go off the render mode to check it out, how it looks like. So I'm going to go back to this one over here. I'm going to go off the Active Tools and turn all of them on, 3D port, viewport, and everything. Then, whenever you are using the period, this is how it will zoom in and out. You can also zoom out like this. Any specific object, select on that period or the oblique sign. There we go. This is how it changes. Okay. You can also hide elements by pressing on H on your keyboard. And if you press on Alt and H, it will unhide it. Okay. So now you know how it works. Now, what I'm going to do is going to be applying a plane over here. So I'm going to click on Mesh. I'm going to do is click on this plane over here. I'm going to do is just select on this one. Let's say I'm going to do is just press on this element, and I'm going to press on G. Press on Z to undo the process. Let's say I'm just going to delete it. And I'm going to do is just apply a plane. I'm going to press on Shift and this one over here. Shift and A, Mesh, and then apply a plane. I'm going to press on S to increase the size. I'm going to just press on G, take it a bit at the top, select on this one, press on G, Z, and bring it at the top. There we go. Now, as we have two of them, now we can also see on the scene collection, we have two of these objects, plane, and then these, elements. So what we can do is that we can select all of them together. Let's say I'm going to select this, this, and we can make up a new, or let's say I'm going to do is just select on both of them, right click, and we can also make it into a new collection. So I'm going to click on new collection. There we go. And I can see we have collection 1, and we can also move this into a scene collection to be another one. Right click, new collection. There we go. So we have plane on our first collection and this monkey heads on the second collection. And we can also extend it or remove it. So first thing what I'm going to do is going to be pressing on Shift and A so that we can apply a camera. Zoom out. I just press on Control Z. There we go. I'm going to do is going to be pressing on Shift, and I'm going to apply the camera right over here. I'm going to be moving a bit on this side. You can press on this and zoom out if you want to. I'm going to do Shift and press over here, or maybe somewhere over here. There we go. Perfect. And I'm going to do is just apply in the camera. Let's try the camera over here. Let's press on G. And let's press on R. R again. You can also press on R and then X. There we go. If I press on 0 now, you can see the effects. Now we can also move on to the render mode. Now it will take a bit of time to render the whole thing because, there's a lot of thing going on inside of this specific object right now. So you can see the render results over here. You'll be able to see it. You can see the view layers, slot 1 and 2, and also the image, whichever there is inside of that specific element. Okay, you can see the collection. And if you turn them off, none of them will appear up. Okay, you can turn them off whenever you want to. You can also extend it if you want to, and you can also hide them whenever you want. So this is basically how it works when you turn them on and off. And you can also turn them on back again when you're basically done with it. Okay? Now you can also move up to orthographic view. Let's say I'm going to press on 5 on my keyboard, and it will give you an orthographic view of that element. Okay, you can also select all of them together, press on A, and get an orthographic view whenever you want to. So basically, there are a couple of shortcut keys which you have to keep in mind when you are working on Blender. So you can see that there are a couple of things on Blender, and they're obviously modeling, sculpting, UV editing, texture, paint, shading, animation. We have render, compositing, geometry nodes, and also scripting. Okay, so even you can use your coding skills over here. Now let's move on to our layouts, and let's just clean every part of it and start off anew. So if you want to start anew, you can also just turn it off and on if you want to, but you can also go off the file, click on new, and then click on general over here. And then it will take just a bit of time to open it up on your screen. And you can already see that it has been opened up on my screen without even showing me any changes. So try it out. Click on this one, file, click on new, and then you're good to go. You can also use it for video editing if you want to. Now, if you want to make any changes, you can also do that. You can select on this option over here. You can move on, toggle through each and every one of these tabs and ribbons. And obviously, another thing is that you can also shift your, workspace into very different cases, such as increasing and changing. You can also make different type of windows. You can also drag it or drag the windows over and over again. You can change out the viewing angles, the camera effect, the hand effect, zooming in and out. Okay. You can also go off over here on edit or windows, and you can make your new window. You can toggle window full screen. You can also make multiple windows at the same time. Okay. So it's basically up to you how you want to work with it. So you just have to double click on any one of these, let's say windows which you have over here. And then what you have to do is just drag it out of its workspace. Okay. You can see this is how it works. You will be able to customize each and every one of the windows which you have. Now from here, if you want to make customizations on your workspace, let's say I'm going to do is increase the size. And now what we can do is just make a couple more timelines if you want to. But if you want to remove it directly from your workspace, drag it up and then down. When you see an arrow, you will basically see that it will be gone. Okay. You can make multiple ones if you want to. It's basically up to you, but you just have to drag up and then down. You will see this arrow over here and you'll be able to remove it. See how easy it is? You can also do the same thing, removed. And you can also do the same thing over here on the animation panel, make multiple windows and also remove it just the way you would do it. You just have to drag it from the top and then down. Okay, you will make multiple ones. But what you have to do is just drag up and down. And whenever you see this arrow, you just have to, let go. You can do the same thing with multiple windows. It's basically up to you. So just fiddle through these options, find out the one which you basically need, and find out the options which will make your work a lot more easier. So thank you for watching this video up till the very end. And if you still have any confusion or any question about any part of the lesson, feel free to ask me. I'm always there to help you out. And in our next lesson, we're going to go step by step, show you about shaders and also a lot of animations which we can do to go off with the basics, and so that we can learn how we can animate just by using Blender. So without any further ado, let's move on to our next lesson of Blender.